What's up, Tim?
Dude, how you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm good. So I just sold a house with the most restrictive HOA that I've ever known. It's $3,500 a year, Scientist Cliffs, and
Wow.
I had a bunch of people come over the weekend, and they were asking me like, "Do you think the HOA would let me do this? Do you think they would let me do that?" And the answer is no, based on the questions they asked. And I started thinking to myself, do we as real estate professionals like HOAs, and does the general public like HOAs? So if you're watching this video live, chime in the comments below, and I'm sure most people will come in after this video goes out. But what do you think of HOAs, Tim?
Honestly, they're a big pain in the. You know what I'm talking about?
You're a no.
No,
Have you ever lived in
why
an
should the
HOA?
neighborhood have control of your freaking civilization? The answer is, I'm in an HOA or had an HOA, and it had been banned because the neighbors hated it so much. They closed down the HOA. It was only like $30 a year, but they were like, "Why do we need an HOA?" And the reason why it got closed down, you're going to laugh, is because the HOA director decided we need a new sign for 25,000, and we were like, "No, we don't need a new sign for 25,000. You're just going to charge everybody like $1,000 to help with this sign." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, it doesn't make any damn sense." So we brought somebody else on board, elected another president, and then president disbanded the HOA. That was the man right there. We brought him in. His first name was Donald. I won't tell you the rest of his name, but he came on in, sliced and diced it, got it done, got it closed. We moved on. So do I like HOAs? Not for single family detached homes. Do I like HOAs for townhouses? Yes. That's where the benefit is, because HOAs in the townhouse is such a small, restricted area. The only thing I've got to be careful with is you don't want people bringing in their big work trucks or parking their 18 wheelers or having a whole bunch of junk out in the front yard. That's where the benefit is. I mean, have you ever seen any of those videos? I'll see videos, about why
Hey,
HOAs
so,
are important. Oh, there
hey,
you go. You got my
so
favorite
look,
one.
so Valerie sent me this the other day. Send this to someone who complains about paying HOA dues. I don't know if it's going to show up big enough on this
I think that was
video,
a
but
coffin on top of that car, but that's not what I saw, man.
so I feel like um, my thought process is that was a deliberate effort to maybe mess with the neighbors.
I think you're right, man. I think you're very right on the money.
So the downside is if you don't have an HOA, nobody's maintaining the quality of people's appearances, and it could theoretically affect property values.
Yeah, but at the same time, you would think people would be respectful enough to take care of their
What about
areas.
those
I mean,
people? What if they're
yeah,
your next door neighbors? What are you going to do if they're your next door neighbors?
I'm going to tell them Halloween is over and that we need to put away the Halloween gear and just kick it up a notch. Come on
And
now.
they say go jump in a lake there, Tim. We're going to do whatever we want. This is America.
This is America. There's no question about that. How do you like America now, Jim, right? I mean, look, HOAs have benefits and they have curses. Let's just call it what it is. If you're a normal, respectful human being, then an HOA, honestly, it doesn't have a lot of value. But if it's in a townhouse community, honestly, yeah, it does have a lot of value. People always ask, though, where's the control feature? And the problem is people never go to the HOA meetings. They never go to the condo meetings. Something happens, there's a say, and then they're like, well, I didn't have a say in that $8,000 additional assessment that they hit me for, right? I mean, that's kind of what we're looking against, right?
So what's the main purpose of an HOA? It's to make sure that everybody maintains a minimal property value in order to maintain the property values in the neighborhood, and to keep a similar aesthetic so that you can't paint your house pink or yellow or bright colors that are going to be considered eyesores, that are going to mess up your property value. I mean, is that overall a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. But do we need to have the government in our back pockets everywhere? I mean, that's what it is. It's just another form of
Is
government
it the government? I
policing.
mean, it's more of like it's like a group of people that get together that decide like it's not the government. There's no like standard U.S. policy for HOA. It's whatever this group of people that live together in this community decide are the minimum standards that we want to live by.
Still have a hard time with that, man. I gotta be honest with you. I mean, you asked me God's honest truth. I think they have too much of an input as it is. I really do. And I look at it from that perspective. That's just me.
So one thing that comes up where people in HOAs have intersects recently that's been in the news a lot is for people that want to Airbnb their house. I'll give you an example. I was showing a client this waterfront house. It was $900,000, and he lived in Northern Virginia. This was going to be a second home. So he said, "Can I Airbnb the house?" He called the HOA. They said, "Thanks for asking. Currently, there is no policy against Airbnb. However, let me call you right back." Called him back the next day. Said, "There's no policy. However, we're going to meet on Thursday, and we're going to pass a resolution, and there will be no Airbnb."
See, that's what I'm talking about,
ended up not buying the house.
So what's that tell you? HOAs love them or hate them? Now, if it had been,
hold on. Now, what if you're that guy's next door neighbor, or you live in that neighborhood and you know all the neighbors, and you're like, this neighborhood is a nice neighborhood. Everybody drives golf carts around. They all know each other. They go over each other's houses. And then now you're going to have all these strangers showing up, having parties or whatever at this HOA. And all you're saying is, for us in our community, we don't want that.
Right. Well, it's a catch-22. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I truly do. There's no question about it. But at the same token, the way that I look at it is I'm kind of tired of people coming in all the time and telling us what we can and cannot do, man, to our properties. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. It's just the way I look at it.
So do you think that it's different if you live in a neighborhood where the houses were very similar and close together? Like you live on some Yellowstone ranch somewhere in La Plata. You're like back in
I live in the back country, dude. I'm on a back farm. You know that.
You live on like 100 acres. So it's not the same thing, because to you, it's not the same. But if you lived in a townhouse, or you lived in a neighborhood where all the houses are the same, and then this one guy comes in and so one of the other issues that comes up a lot is, are you allowed to park your camper in your driveway in the neighborhood?
Camper. What about your work truck? I had a guy
truck. That's another one. My brother-in-law ran into that. So he lived in a townhouse neighborhood that said no commercial vehicles. So he drove a work truck for a company, and the company lettering was on the side, and they were telling him that he couldn't park his own, and that was his personal vehicle. Like, he only had the truck. Can't park it in the neighborhood
because it was considered commercial in essence.
Right.
I mean, Brian, but the idea, if it's a townhouse community, it is a very tight-knit community, and you do have to maintain a certain set of standards because everybody lives super close together. There's going to be some instances when HOA makes a lot of sense. There's going to be instances when they do not. When it's a single-family detached home community, honestly, I have a hard time with it, but it just depends upon what you're trying to achieve in that community. If it's a gated community, sure, you have an HOA because there's a reason for it and there's a purpose for it. If it's not a gated community, it's an everyday Joe Smith kind of community. What's the HOA paying for, man? What are we doing?
Well, it's not the money so much, because a lot of them have HOAs that are covenants and restrictions, but there's no annual or monthly fee. It's just like, as an example, you can't build a fence over 8 feet tall between anywhere on your property. You can't have more than two, or you can't have any unregistered vehicles on your property.
Well, I guess there are some reasons for them. There's some reasons against them. I think it's a catch-22. I'll be honest with you, Brian. I don't think you're ever going to have a winner.
So my vote is that you read the HOA docs, which is a law in Maryland. When you buy a home in Maryland, you're given the HOA docs either in the beginning or at some point during the process, and then you're given 3 days to read them over. And if at any point you decide you don't agree, you can choose not to live in the neighborhood.
But you have to do that within a certain amount of time too, right? Isn't that the normal case?
Yes and no. I mean, the thing is, you have to order these from these companies now, and sometimes they take 2 weeks to get there. So
they do. I concur with that.
Have them up front, but there's some issues with that because they're doing an accounting thing. So I think that they do serve a purpose for people who have. I think that it's like anybody can live where they want to live, and you can choose to live in an HOA or not choose to live in an HOA. So me personally, I would not want to live in an HOA. I'm actually okay with the neighbors living however they want to live, and they can have their house look like that guy in that video right there. But I generally tend to live where I cannot hit a neighbor with a rock. So, there's
So
no
you're gonna.
houses right next to mine.
So is it a house proximity that really dictates that? Is that what you're talking about?
To some extent, because I don't want my neighbor having a house like that right there. I think even if it was 100 yards away from me, that would
Right.
bother me.
Well, it makes sense. I can see that. I mean, like I said, there's benefits to both sides.
The problem is, Tim, we're too reasonable. You know what I mean? We're not we're not unreasonable.
It's unreasonable to have these HOAs. They tell me I can't paint my door purple. Well, yeah, there's a reason for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense, Brian. I get it 100%. No argument for me here, sir. Sorry, I'm just not going to be I'm not argumentative today.
Well, the neighborhood that I was referring to, Scientist Cliffs, has probably the most restrictive. It's like a handbook. Not only is there an HOA, but they actually have an approval process where you have to be approved to live in the neighborhood. So everybody thinks that you can't discriminate, which you can't discriminate against protected classes. So you can't discriminate based on sex, religion, age. I should know this because I
Marital
take all the tests
status.
all the
Yep.
time. Marital status,
Mhm.
all of that fun stuff. But you can discriminate against a non-protected class. So as an example, in Scientist Cliffs, up until several years ago, you had to have a college degree to
wow.
be accepted into the HOA. Now they've somewhat unrestricted it. Now, even before that, you had to have a PhD. And before that, you had to be an actual scientist. And before that, you had to live in this house in the middle of the neighborhood for 6 months while they all evaluated you and decided if they're going to want you to live in their neighborhood.
That's wicked. I love
And
that.
you got voted on. Do you think you'd be voted in the neighborhood?
I don't know. Probably not.
No, you would. I wouldn't. But you look like you belong in that neighborhood.
No,
You'd be
thanks,
voted
man. I
in.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm being inclusive. I like that, man. What the
Yeah.
hell?
All right, Tim. Well, that's it, man.
All right, brother. As always, man, you have a good one. Later. Bye.